Well, hey there, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us. My name is Bill Mendoza. I am Oglala and Suchangu Lakota, and I am a graduate research assistant here at Montana State University in the Indigenous Perspectives in School Librarianship Project. So I'm very excited to have a couple guests with us here today. We have Matthew Rantanen and Jessica Sutherland. Matthew brings just an impressive career, and he can expand on some of his important experiences and responsibilities that he has around the country, not only within his home community, but he's the Director of Technology for the California Tribal Chairmen's Association, and he's the Director of Tribal Digital Village TDV Net, the network initiative that was started in 2001, and he has so much more experience and background, including with the Native Public Media Organization. We also have with us Jessica Southern, who I'm so appreciative of, has been able to join us here today from her classroom. She's got a sub there, and her kids are in the background there, but she's joining us from Rocky Boy Elementary. She is raising her family there with her husband, who is Chippewa Cree, and is an ally and friend and educator there on the Rocky Boy reservation in Montana. So with that, I want to turn it over to you both, and we'll start with Jessica. And Jessica, if you can just give us an idea of yourself and the environment there in a couple minutes or so, and then we'll go to Matt before I plug a little bit of our Indigenous Perspectives in School Librarianship Project. Thanks so much. I forgot to mention you were a graduate of the Library Media Services program here, right? Is that correct? Yeah. Go ahead, Jessica.
Um, yeah, I am currently in it. So
Gotcha.
I'm working on it. I have one more semester left. So a little bit about me. I am married to a Chippewa Cree member. His name's Michael Sutherland. We've been married 15 years, and I have 2 boys with him. And I'm from California. I'm back and forth between Montana and California. Before I started teaching, we took off and we lived in Hawaii for 2 years. And I taught there, and I taught kindergarten. And when we came back to his reservation. He was homesick for the winter. I prefer the island life, but sacrifices. So I was fortunate enough to get employed here at the school. My mother-in-law taught here for 33 years, and she taught first grade. So when I started, I taught kindergarten, and then our librarian retired this last spring, and I thought it would be a nice change because I do love kindergarten. But I just saw this position open, and it just kind of all fell open for me to get it. And I'm so glad I did, because I was kind of stuck in my room in my little data and my kindergarten world. And since I've been able to be in the library this year, I've got to meet all of the students across the grade levels. So I teach kindergarten through 6th grade, and that's been really fascinating. And I got to do like a complete facelift in the library. I got to just kind of design it and take charge. So it's been really fun for me this year. So that's
Great.
kind of where I'm coming from.
Great, appreciate that. And Matt, I neglected to mention in that brief introduction of your career there that, and I know, like anyone, you probably don't like those long-winded introductions, but you're also a board member for the Indigenous Perspectives and School Librarianship Project, and so I wanted to also make sure I mentioned that. But yeah, take it away, Matt.
Yeah, it's an honor to be on the board, and I'm looking forward to some of the changes and some of the opportunities we can create together. So let's rewind a little bit. Recovering graphic designer. That's always a fun one to throw out there. That was originally what I was trained to do. And through higher learning and education at Washington State University. But I'm Cree from Alberta. My family has been in the U.S. for 127 years. We based in northern Idaho and over in Spokane, Washington. And I grew up in the Northwest. My dad was in the military a bit. We bounced around. I ended up in Southern California, and I direct the Southern California Tribal Chairmen's Association's technology components of 24 member tribes. And we created the Tribal Digital Village Network in 2001 and have rebuilt that fixed microwave network about 3.5 times based on technology, serving the communities, getting government subsidies like E-rate funding, navigating that for tribes. We were the first to figure that out, and that specifically addresses libraries, schools, and Head Start programs. And then getting deep into the advocacy piece and the policy making. Worked with Native Public Media for 10 years. I chaired that board for 2 terms and vice chaired for a term. I co-chair the Tech and Telecom Subcommittee at the National Congress of American Indians. I think I've been with them almost 7 years now, or maybe almost 8. On Arizona State University's American Indian Policy Institute. I've advised the California Broadband Council to the governor from the tribal and rural perspective, and have advised the Western Governors Association on the same capacity. I did 2 terms on the Native Nations Broadband Task Force at the FCC, and it's really kind of helped me base my understanding of policy and advocacy with, with all of that, a variety, I guess, that I've been working around. It really informs decision making and solution creation that works for all reservations, not just regional or specific reservations. So good to be here with you today.
Great. Thanks so much, Matt. Yeah, no shortage of both pragmatic talent within the room, but also just, how we're looking at things on the macro level in terms of, how both education and tribes are being affected in this context. So appreciate it so much. Well, I wanted to take a little bit of time to talk about the Indigenous Perspectives and school librarianship program, and if not project. And today we're excited to make available a scholarship opportunity to support teachers from Alaska and Montana who wish to become school librarians. At the heart of the IPSL project is preparation of our school librarians and strengthening of their communities. It's our endeavor here at MSU to provide a curriculum and approach to school librarian preparation that provides space for our learners to challenge their existing assumptions, explore new ideas, and meet the challenges of today so that they may seize the opportunities of tomorrow. Thanks to the Institute of Museum and Library Sciences, the Laura Bush 21st Century Library Program, that's what's made this possible. The IPSL scholarship aims to support teachers from Montana and Alaska who hold a valid teaching license and wish to obtain a fully online library media certificate through MSU. The program is 21 credits and can be completed in as few as 3 semesters. MSU also offers an option for students to earn a master's degree in curriculum instruction after completion of the certificate program by taking only 9 additional credits, although this is at cost. The deadline to apply for this opportunity for fall 2021 cohort is April 1st. Real quick, what does the scholarship cover? Recipients of this scholarship will receive tuition and fees for the 21 credit library media certificate program, money towards books, mentorship with an expert of school librarian, and professional development. So if you want to learn more about this opportunity, please go on over. You can email us at librarymedia@montana.edu or visit our website, and we tried to shorten this a little bit for you, so it's a bit.ly link, bit.ly/MSU Library Media, and then make sure you just put the protocol, the HTTP, in front of that. Again, that's bit.ly /MSU Library Media. And lastly, you can follow us at MSU Library Media on Twitter or MSU Library Media Certificate on Facebook. So thanks so much for that. We have some great conversation to delve into, and we have some great events coming up. On March 17th, we'll have the IPS Scholarship Informational Webinar here live on our YouTube channel. And then on March 24th, we'll also be doing another speaker series for working in Indian country. So please stay tuned for those dates. And the critical date that we're impressing upon everybody is the one that I started with, is April 1st is the deadline for the scholarship. So make sure that you go to Montana State University's website, look up Library Media Certificate Program, and apply to the Library Media Certificate Program. So with that, I want to pick the brains of our guest speakers here today and just hear a little bit more about some of their experiences and the way that they're viewing things. So why don't we start with you, Matt? Tell me a little bit about what libraries mean to you and how they have shaped your education and career. I'd like to first get a personal touch for this before we delve into some of the weeds here.
So I think libraries have always, even as a young kid, like grade school, junior high, have been very interesting to me because no matter where you live, you can travel through books, and I really like to travel. I appreciate being a global kid. My dad was in the Air Force for a bit, so we lived in Germany for a while and bounced around a lot. I don't know if you can hear the hail that's happening in San Diego right now, but that's happening behind me. So essentially, going into a library allowed me to pick up a book or a story and learn, basically escape to a different place. And not that I didn't want to be where I was when I was growing up as a kid, but I definitely appreciated learning new things and being in new places in the world. And books enabled me to do that. In my career, libraries have become a very instrumental part in what I do, and that is ensure that the tribal communities that I work with have access to broadband. And in the beginning of the Tribal Digital Village Network in 2001, the primary goal was to enhance after-school resource programs on each of the reservations of the member tribes of SCTCA. And most of those resource programs were held in libraries, in the tribal library. And so the primary objective was to provide technology, equipment, training, and access to the internet for those libraries. So it is really the foundation of the Tribal Digital Village Network. And from that, we have built out to the rest of the tribal municipalities, and then have graduated out to converting our network to support tribal homes. So it's really a foundational space in the tribal community for access to education, culture, travel, communication, and a real baseline for learning for the community itself, and a real platform to build from for creating a network that carries the communication services to so many community members.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Matt. So Jessica, that piece, growing up in a large land-based tribe, myself, that Matt talked about, libraries really serving as an escape and kind of the surrounding circumstances, if not a place to imagine and dream, and quite frankly, provide hope, is something that I experienced directly. What drew you to this space in terms of librarianship, and how do you see that kind of playing out in your libraries as your community there, Chippewa Cree, step through your doors?
Okay, so yeah, we are so rural and secluded where we're at, and long winter overcast, right? It's almost like Alaska sometimes right where we're at. And so I do notice a lot of sadness and long faces and gloom. So what I saw working here prior to being a librarian was none of the students liked going into the library. They didn't feel really welcomed. And I am a very decorative person, I guess, and not so much like I need a lot of items, but my space has to be relaxing and inviting. So, because I want to come to work every day, so I want it to be what what I like to look at and stuff, and I don't want to be in this like uptight setting. So, I had designed my classroom to be that way, and I think that kind of opened up an opportunity for me when I applied for the library position, because I really reached that point of, hey, I think I can connect with these kids. And since the library is the heart of the school, I think I have some potential where I could maybe embellish here if I'm given the chance. And because all the kids, we would have a lot of disciplinary students that would get sent down to my wing, whether they were doing tasks or refocusing, things like that. And they all wanted to be in my room. And so that to me was kind of like a highlight of, well, they must feel comfortable coming here. And so I just kind of jumped at that opportunity when it was presented as an available choice. And so I cannot say that I ever thought I would be a librarian. But I thought that this might be one of those little areas where it's like, maybe I could do something different that's really good and really big here.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's kind of just where I started with that approach. And so, so prior to the school year starting, the room was just all white, messy bookshelves. The kids were never ever taught, how to use a library. They come in and they had to be quiet, and the teacher picked out the books that they got to choose from. And I'm talking kindergarten through 6th grade. And I watched her for about 4 years, and my students, even, I've never seen a 5-year-old not want to go, to a special or change up the scenery and stuff, but they didn't really want to go. And that kind of broke my heart. So I thought for sure, like, I don't know, I just knew I could get to the little kids. My bigger challenge was getting them older students to want to be here, to want to help me, to want to be a part of this community. And so in my design, what I did was I just opened it up, the floor plan, and I kind of made it progress like young childhood side to like pre-adolescence, right? But I gave them like free seating choices, and I brought in like my Hawaii life. So we have like aquariums in the background on our murals. I got skylights with sea turtles, things like that. And I brought that here because a lot of these kids never get to go to those places. We only see woodland critters, and so I brought in a piece of outside culture, but in a way that it's really inviting, neat, and they want to learn about it. The other thing I've done this year is I've given them an open voice or an open choice. Like, they tell me what they want to learn about. And I find resources and I embellish in our books those types of questions. And so it's been working just strangely in a sense. And I've been learning so much from my college education part of this with the media program. And we started off online this year, and that was really difficult for these kids because they were just like, who's this? And what is she talking about? She's just reading to us. I'm trying to get them engaged. But when we came back in January, I feel that the kids have really been able to grasp the concept of what I wanted to create. And the bigger picture that I've been explaining to my students is, because a lot of my sixth graders are bummed because we only have a couple of months left of school. And I've been telling them, don't worry, you can always come back over, come visit me, come help me. And we have at our college here at Stone Child College, we have like a consortium deal with the high schoolers. So like their junior, senior year, if they've got all their credits, we can get them that, what is it, work study, where they take a class, but they can go work, so they can come to the library and help me. And I told them that I would love to see that they, I want to build partnerships with them. I want them to be in here. And what I'm seeing recently this week is they don't want to leave the library. They want
Yeah.
to be here. They want to help me. And I've told them I love that. I want to train them. I want to teach them. And then my middle-aged students, like second, third grade, I told them we're going to work the next few years to build that partnership. So when you're in sixth grade, you can just take off with it and help me. And that's just something I thought would give them a purpose being out here, give them a job. Even my sixth graders today said they're more than willing to come down and help and read to them and tutor my kindergartners. And I think that's amazing, because we never had anything like that last year even.
Yeah.
So just to see that little bit in just the environment and the setup and the openness has been really, really wonderful for me. Anyways, I feel really good with it.
So great, Jessica. So great. I mean, just your description of trying to hold on to those students and, really, utilize that attention that you've been able to kind of have them focus on, that's empowerment. You're a facilitator of that empowerment. And I think Matt, she's really describing an ecosystem, right? She talked about Stone Child College. She talked about, dual credit programming. Tribal college is so huge in this space, and
Mhm.
schools as communities, and then even within a school as a community is what we're all striving for. As she mentioned, long winters, rural frontier environments, and then you have within that school kind of the library, as an incubator of that community. And so
Mhm.
um, what do we need to know about how tribes are thinking about this in terms of kind of that big self-determination and tribal sovereignty when we're thinking about ecosystems? Give us a macro look at what are things tribes are. I mean, Jessica's clearly in the thick of it there, at a community level, trying to make those things happen. But what makes that happen at a macro level?
Yeah, it's funny because I had that experience, Pullman, Washington, long winters, gray, everybody was gloom and doom by the third month of winter. And what do we do? Surrounded by wheat fields. And I remember the library being a good place to go to escape that. But having worked now in the communities of Southern California for so long and been around their tribal libraries, they've taken it to another level. And it sounds like you have too as well, Jessica, that you've created a comfortable space and a creative space for people to be. And I think that plays into, the sovereignty question and sort of taking an ownership of a library that traditionally was a kind of a stuffy place to be, and with rigid rules and structure and tradition, but you know making it res or making it tribal and bringing in the culture of the the native culture, even though you're surrounded by other cultures in all of the media that's available, all the stories from Europe and from Africa and all of the different places in the books, but taking the environment and making the environment comfortable, and then realizing at a tribal level that the library is pretty much all of the sources of information you need to manage your government, to look at traditional government structures, to follow the history of governments and how they've succeeded and failed, and how to manage your own, to grasp the concept of language preservation, to build programs around teaching your youth the language, and having interactive resources, digital resources, and a repository for language learning tools and language games, to get the community re-engaged with knowing their own language. Very apparent here in Southern California, as the fluent speakers are all past, and people are trying to grasp, a 3/4 of the language or 2/3 of the language that they still have a handle on, and then trying to, share that with community that's younger than them, to be able to continue the language use and not lose it completely. I think that's one of the things that even the tribal governments are looking at the library for, is a foundation of resources to be able to continue to hang on to their culture and to collect their history, as other cultures have in the past, and break away a little bit from our oral tradition by capturing that oral tradition in digital media, so that you're not actually every time interacting with a person, but sometimes you're interacting with the recording of a person that's maybe long past, that is teaching you the language from 2-3 generations ago, because someone had the foresight to capture that on video and to store it at their local library to be able to use. So I think that's the scope that tribes are looking at libraries as that foundational element to be able to hang on to their sovereignty and to teach it to the next generation.
No, I appreciate that, Matt. So important. Those are the nuts and bolts of identity, basically, is what
Yep.
Everybody is preoccupied, from educators to policymakers. How not only preserve but revitalize and then perpetuate. That's the challenge. So Jessica, as you're kind of going through your preparation program in library media sciences, how are you thinking about some of those kind of overarching standards, priorities for library media services, and then how does that relate to kind of the situation that you're in now as a librarian? We have Indian education for all in this state. We have new library standards that have kind of been incorporated into programming, and then you're having, as a student and a librarian at the same time, continuing your education, have to sort through all that. So what are you seeing in that space, your preparation versus what you see when you walk in that door and walk out of that door? What do you think about?
Okay. Yeah, I feel like when the school year started, I was just kind of like, I just moseyed in, right? And the reality is I have a very busy work day teaching all the grade levels. When the school year started, we were online, and I was able to combine them and free up some more of my side time. And I really focused on one, I wanted to see what we're offering our students. So even though they weren't allowed to kind of explore the library, my goal was to set it up so that it would be conveniently explorable. Like, I want them to be able to do this. We definitely are in a I don't even know what it would be called, but our books, I have found, like, I was just telling my professor, 1925 is the copyright date on some of my books. And I'm like,
Yeah.
holy moly, like, I have a lot of work ahead of me. But so what I did was I pulled all the standards. The state of Montana looks like they're in a bit of revision to finalize their categories, but I combined them with the Golden Triangle co-op that we also follow here at the school. And I like to merge them to the best of my ability. And so I kind of, for the educational aspect of it, I started off at the beginning of the year with the media part of it, because our kids were going to be online. So I taught them media safety, and that was really good, but it went kind of quick. And then we did more free choice, where they got to go on to like Epic. I taught them how to navigate websites properly. So I was hoping to be reaching some of those core concepts via web-based because I didn't get to work with them in person or anything. So now that we're back in person, I feel like I was able to kind of flip the school year and start teaching like Dewey Decimal System, fiction versus nonfiction, because I felt like they could get more hands-on with that versus here's a nonfiction book and a fiction book online. So, so I kind of, with my younger kids, I've been a little bit more focused standard based. With my older students, I've been a lot more lenient. They have the technology skills, and we're focusing on how to navigate a library systematically. I have not exposed them to the database and stuff yet. We're having a lot of issues there, so I didn't really want to just, purge all that onto them. But I just feel that as I go into this now with my year mapping guide, because I have everything printed out and highlighted, all my key points, I think that come next year in the fall, I'll be able to approach it a little bit differently without the COVID, restrictions. So, and then when I think of it as a, a standpoint like having Indian education for all, we have a complete wonderful Native American section in the library, and it's always open, and we have displays of different titles and stuff that I change out. But I have to remember, a lot of what I'm doing this year is to kind of encourage the students to want to be here. So I'm giving them a lot of free choice.
Yeah.
And so I haven't stuck so much to the Indigenous categories. But I really want to update these selections. And I also am looking at getting like the World Online books and like encyclopedias and stuff, just because some of like our resources, like 1996, it's like some of our newest stuff, and I'm like, yeah. So
Yeah,
the funding.
you bring up such an important point that, our students are diverse. They have diverse interests as much as they are diverse in and of themselves. 573 different tribes, 300 different languages. Before
Yes.
we started this live, folks, we were talking about, Matt wanted a Star Wars background. He has some stuff there. I mean, you think about, our exploration through library, and even though these critical identity components, our language, our history, our culture, albeit Chippewa Cree or Oglala Lakota or whatever, are so important, but at the end of the day, children want to look at Star Wars. When I was a kid, it was jets, and the next week it was dragons, and the week after that it was the space shuttle, and so you kind of, as a librarian, you're shaping that community for them, and that's
Yeah.
so vital. And Matt, what does this mean? I guess given Jessica's talked about COVID a couple times here. You've been certainly immersed in that and have had to change your order of business with tribal leaders and whatnot. But, I've heard about there being an acceleration of broadband in this country. And I've just been skeptical about that. I haven't been able to study it or anything. But, is that reaching Indian country? Because, you talk about the last mile. Everything Jessica was talking about has a cost associated with it. And even though she works really hard for free, open access, age appropriate, education centric, there's costs associated with this. So what does that future look like, and how has COVID accelerated that or made it worse?
Well, it's definitely illustrates or amplifies the technology challenges that libraries have. Access to broadband, access to enough broadband to be able to perform functions with a number of students online simultaneously. You have, well, I mean, I think Jessica mentioned, trouble with the database, and you have, technology or technological challenges. You need support staff, you need IT staff, and that all takes money. That all requires the library to have a budget that incorporates those types of things. And as more and more things are available online, and the amount of data that we move back and forth online, it's more and more important to have a true broadband connection that can scale to the needs. There has never been a better marketing campaign than COVID-19 for broadband in your home and broadband everywhere. I think it's very obvious that people that didn't realize how bad it was without broadband now all realize how bad it is for them, but then how hard it must be for others in different communities. It's opened a few eyes that were really had blinders on, were only looking forward. They weren't looking at adjacent communities. So I think that's been a good thing. I mean, there's a horrible but really beneficial saying that don't let a good emergency go to waste.
Yeah.
And during this time, thought processes have changed, restrictions have lifted, parameters have expanded, and we need to take advantage of every moment that we have this more open mindset to get the dollars flowing, get the technology in the hands of the people, get the opportunities in the hands of the tribes. And yes, it is actually getting to the tribes. There is $1 billion, actually 1.3 billion if you add it up, coming down to tribes. 1 billion specifically for tribes to use for broadband deployment, and then 300 million to use between a state and a provider to serve tribal communities. And there's actually another 285 million to help to help minority communities that are underserved or unserved. So we're seeing a very good chunk of money coming down. We're obviously always concerned about the distribution method, and we're trying to help the federal government through that process so that they make the proper choices and engage the tribal leadership on how that money should be distributed fairly and based on need. But we are seeing this happen. More and more tribes are taking on the responsibility of providing their own communication systems, because we've proven time and time again, when the federal government puts money down that same old rat hole, they don't get a different result from the carriers that exist, the incumbents. The incumbents do not have a requirement to serve 100% of their footprint. They only have a requirement to serve 98.5% of their footprint. Yeah. And 1.5% of that footprint is plenty to exclude the tribes in the most rural areas of the United States. And into that, into that small percentage and been left out so many times. Tribes have understood to do this themselves is probably the step. There's most recently too, last year they had a tribal priority applied to spectrum licensing for the first time for the use of broadband. We got it applied to FM radio back when I was at the Native Nations Broadband Task Force at the FCC, and that same rulemaking was adopted into the pre-auction process of 2.5 gigahertz, which is technically called the educational broadcast spectrum. So that enables a tribe to have a full powered licensed piece of spectrum that's not in the public use space. There won't be interference in using that spectrum to serve their own community. So it's the first time, and we'd like to see that repeat. For every time that spectrum comes to auction at the FCC, that the tribe gets a shot at it to opt in and control that spectrum over their land for no license fee, just an application. We're very excited to see some of the projects that are being developed around that space. And with this new money, I think we can guarantee we're going to see some expansion in broadband opportunities on the reservations.
That's great. That's really awesome, Matt. To hear that not only are we going to have, I don't know what they call that in your world, but, just models of success, if not positive, practices that are happening in that space for other tribes to, not only look to, but also replicate, in some circumstances. And so, that will be so important, especially as there's resources to kind of come along with that. Yeah, you bring up an important, consideration that I wanted to talk about was tribal leaders' understandings of librarians. And so before we turn to you for that, librarianship, and, basically tribal libraries and archives. But before we turn to that, Jessica, you talked about your students. How has parental engagement, which is so critical to education, changed during COVID here? How are you seeing that? What does that look like for a librarian? I can envision a teacher in many ways, kind of having to shuffle the homework, shuffle the assignments, providing reports, all that being done virtually. But what does parental engagement look like for you, and how are you excited for that moving forward?
Um, it's actually been really laid back parental engagement. Normally we have open door policies, and we've had to close everything up. So the only context I have is if I do like positive phone calls home, and it's a little different also doing positive phone calls home as a librarian versus a classroom teacher, because you have 25 students where I have 300 to 400 students if I were to do positive phone calls. So they're not as frequent as I would like them to be, and they're a lot more spread out versus like I'll call a family of students, because
Mhm.
I'll have some siblings, and on down. So the other downfall is financially, the community isn't supporting the library like it would normally if we had book fairs and activities and events. And I don't think it's because they don't want to. I definitely think it's more of a lack of resource. I know that a lot of our students tell me, oh, my mom doesn't have a credit card, so she can't order online. So unless it's like a cash transaction or something, we run into these little hiccups like that. On the plus side, though, with the parental involvement, I'm going to go back to the college here. The college has a significant family, like a monthly family event where they do activities and stuff, and their database is a little bit different than ours, where they're on the Montana database, so they have open access. So even during COVID, the students could get into the eBase and they were able to access their books and stuff. Our database at the school is a private server, so I can't even get my staff to get into our server. Like there's only like 3 of us with access to it, and so I don't have the ability yet to get the students login information so that they can go in and see the books that we have. So that's going to be a work in progress for us. I have been in touch with our superintendent and the high school librarian, and we're working on getting a new database with an open system. And our goal is to merge with Stonechild College. And if we merge with them, we will then be able to merge among the other communities, Hill County, the Hill County, and I believe all of them are on the Helena server for the capital of the state. So we would be able to then provide a lot more access to historical documentation. And Stonechild has an immense amount of stuff. At our school, we have a Cree room, or Cree, we all of the kids take Cree here for a language. So our Cree teacher, she has a room like displays, and she's got the historical artifacts, so to speak. So I think that's a really good connection for me and the Cree teacher to keep that bond. And so whenever we do, I would say in the past we did a lot of more family nights and stuff, but this year it's just been so hiccupy with this COVID. And even when we do parent teacher conferences and stuff, it's so restricted, to like 5
Yeah.
people into the building. So we are letting the kids come in, but our parents are still being restricted. And it's unfortunate for our school this year, but I'm hoping that this will all kind of, either it'll go to online communication where we do a lot more emailing and stuff, but I do believe we have a lot of that broadband issue out here, and lack of So all of our students have devices and stuff, but if they're on our school's internet at their home, because we did provide for them that way, they're limited to only be able to access like the Microsoft Teams, their internet page, and then like Seesaw or whatever programs we allow. So parents can't necessarily jump onto that internet and communicate with us unless they're on their student's device, student account type thing, because the broadband was getting used up so fast that it was like within 15 hours the usage was gone because the homes were all jumping on everyone's stuff out here. So it became really like tedious at the beginning of this year because we tried just kind of opening it up, but it's not strong enough, the connections and the services. So they've done what they can, but I'm hoping that the parental part picks up, because I would love for them to get to see what their students are enjoying. And also, just like a little side note, we've been doing 21st century programs started this month. We've had it for years, but we went back to it, bringing the kids in, and I'm hoping that will bring in some parents also for volunteers. But right now we're focusing on the students, getting the students here, and we've seen kind of a change this year. We're hiring the high schoolers instead of bringing in parent volunteers, and that's been really fun to see that, because it's kind of given them a purpose. So that's kind of what I'm seeing as that's unraveling.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's great. Thanks so much for that, Jessica. Yeah, and I apologize. There's a lag on your video, and I'm not sure if it's me or you, or maybe it's those issues we were just talking about. You know, the bandwidth limited fashion, and I'm here in Bozeman, Montana, so it's even in a place like this, the internet is something that is not quite equitable depending on where you are and how it's being delivered to you. Matt, she is definitely talking about, the challenges that COVID has placed on parental engagement, what it takes for parental engagement in general. Your job must be so difficult. Tribal leaders have to think about nations, in the sense of, not only thinking about tribal enterprise, but healthcare, jurisprudence, education, everything under the sun. How are they going to prioritize tribal libraries and the issues that folks like Jessica is talking about, and not that we are placing them in responsibility for everything carte blanche, but there's a shared ownership of this, but at the same time they have to be advocates. If they're not up to point prioritizing this in their policy conversations. So what does that look like, and how are you, being in this field for a while now, see that issue playing out over the years and in the future to come?
Well, so I'm seeing something where they're looking at what happened through COVID, and in San Diego County, kids have been out of school for I think over a year, and they're just considering going back in the next weeks. So obviously, there's been a real strain on who can learn and how they can learn from home. But the library has been even though people aren't going to the library has still been a central point of contact for providing an expanded access point to their parking lot. What we call a Wi-Fi drive-in, where they can drive up and sit in the parking lot and use the Wi-Fi services that the library has in place, even though the
Wow.
students can't go in the library. So it's still been a focal point of the community for connectivity. And, those programs are checking books out to kids, under COVID safety rules. They're interacting with parents that need sort of entertainment, if you will, or knowledge expanding opportunities for their children. Some of the librarians have been helpful in gathering students and identifying who doesn't have a device. I was able to wrangle almost 1,000 laptops for students in San Diego County through a couple different programs that exist in California. And the librarians were some of those that helped identify households with students that didn't have a device in hand to be able to use for the internet for doing schoolwork. And so they've always been there. They haven't shied away from the COVID problems. They've addressed the COVID problems and tried to do what they could during this timeline. And so a lot of that relies on a creative and devoted librarian, which is we see that in Jessica, we see that in many people that take part in this. And I think that shines right now. And the fact that broadband is a focal point, now and for this administration at the federal government, libraries and focusing on the fact that some children may have just missed a year of school, and effectively being held back because they did not learn what they needed to learn for this calendar year. I think the library comes a big part of that, because the library is also the place where children make up classes in online opportunities. Like, in the past, we've had kids use Cyber High and Play-Doh, and I'm not sure the names of some of the more current ones, but have been able to actually make up high school credit and graduate on time with their classes. And I would imagine the library is going to play a key role moving forward in that. And the tribal leaders know that, because their children and their grandchildren are those kids that have been affected and are going through these programs, and realize that, if the library doesn't have support as we graduate out of this pandemic, there's going to be a lot of kids without a support system to help them catch up.
No, that's great. That's great. Jessica, is that something that you're seeing with Rocky Boy as you're kind of thinking to the future? Are those conversations happening, or is that something that you're kind of bracing for, if you will, that kind of added responsibility, task?
I would completely support it. We haven't had the discussions, but I would, I believe as a library media specialist that the computer aspect of it, I might not be the technology, guru coordinator, but I definitely feel that I should have these materials to assist these students with any of those catch-up moments. I open up the library to offer tutoring. I myself can do interventions for any of these struggling students. It is unfortunate because of that gap that we have seen this year in COVID, and the learning gaps are significant. So our classroom numbers are 20 to 25. And, over the time, we did everything diligently to keep those kids on engaged material. Like, we had the materials to them, home visits, and we still probably only had about 8 successful students out of the 25 come out of this, because they just did not have that one-to-one contact with us. And so I am a little bit worried for that. And as it was, mentioned, that these are our future. And so these students are our future. And I feel that as a library media specialist, I not only need to prioritize and teach book standards and the importance of books and have freedom of, exploration of the books and stuff, but the media part of it is so key to me, because of so much of our instruction is online now. And I don't see us going back to paperwork, mostly because the convenience of online. So I think a lot of it has to be approached lightly, like kindergarten, first grade, like how much media time. But our 5th grade and 6th graders are doing everything online. And so I think that we need to have a significant or a supported computer lab. And I think that I should have devices for quick to grab. And I should also be able to present, like interactive smart boards and stuff, just to keep the kids able. And so I can provide more than just story time. And I'm not trying to downsize story time. I just think that if we are going to build a strong youth that's going to find value and keep the library systems going, they need to see it touching in all of these worldly aspects. So I'm 100% like supportive of being that interventionist for it and opening up my library for it. Look at my face, it froze funny. Oh my gosh, that's crazy.
Sorry about that. That's why
That's okay.
I'm trying to keep as
Oh,
straight of a face as I can in case I freeze like that.
oh. So yeah, I do hope that mostly our tribe supports it, but our superintendent has been really good about pushing for our budget, and and I think that if I collaborate with the Stone Child College, she's got so many family connections that it would only enhance and strengthen us, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, Jessica. Yeah, Matt's getting us, but it's perfect timing. We have come up upon our scheduled time, and just wanted to thank you guys both so much. I'm asking a second here for ways that people can reach out to you if they're curious about the content that's shared today, or would like to offer their help or assistance. Um, but I just want to thank our guests today, Matt Rantanen and Jessica Sutherland. So grateful, so powerful. Some of the things that you were talking about are not only on the cutting edge, but core issues within our tribal communities. And just appreciate you guys so much to be able to come and bear that time with us. Upcoming next with the Indigenous Perspectives in School Librarianship is an event on March 17th, IPS Scholarship Informational Webinar. If you're looking to be a librarian and you're a licensed certified teacher in Alaska or Montana, and if you're serving tribal community, native or non-native, Jessica's an ally. She happens to be married up there in Chippewa Cree country, but at the same time, we have plenty tribal librarians that are tribal teachers that want to be librarians, and so we encourage you to participate in this next event. Again, follow us on social media. This is our YouTube channel, MSU Library Media. You can follow us on Twitter, MSU Library Media, or on Facebook at MSU Library Media Certificate. So with that, Matt, how can folks get a hold of you and reach out if they need to know more about your work and your efforts?
Google me. No,
All right.
it's my email address can be shared, and you have that. So if people reach out to you asking, please share it. A short version of my email address is mrr at S as in Southern, C as in California, T as in tribal, D as in digital, V as in village.net. So feel free to reach out.
Okay, appreciate it, Matt. Thanks, Jessica. How about you?
yeah, I would prefer if you provided them with the email.
Great.
It's just easier, I think, that way. And I don't know if I
Yeah,
have access to like a chat box to like type it in,
no
but
worries. I'll put that at the bottom of the show
okay.
notes. So both you guys just want to make sure we had that captured on video, but it'll be in the show notes. So just want to make
Okay,
sure you're
thank
comfortable
you.
sharing it. Again, Matt, Jessica, thank you so much for today. Thank you for everybody joining, and look forward to engaging with you in the future. Have a great day.
Okay,
Thanks for
Bye-bye.
thank
having us.
you.
Yep.
See
Bye bye.
you.
Bye.